At Achieve Emotional Mastery, we know that you have been searching for answers high and low. You've been trying to find ways to overcome anxiety and depression, or to even out your mood and avoid the highs and lows that are associated with bipolar disorder. I hope that you're here today looking for evidence that healing is possible for you. Well, I think the best way for you to see exactly what is possible is to hear directly from our graduates. I don't want you just to take my word for it that healing is possible. I want you to hear from somebody who's graduated from Achieve Emotional Mastery, who's transformed their own life. I have Mary here today with me. She was diagnosed with anxiety and depression, as well as bipolar disorder back in her 30s. Now she's walking a very different life. This has completely transformed her life. And I want you to hear exactly from her what has happened and what she thinks of the whole process. Thank you again, Mary, for just being here with me today. I am looking forward to diving into your testimony, just talking about where you were at the beginning, what's happened, how Achieve Emotional Mastery has changed things for you. And so let's just go with a brief overcap of where you were at, like when you found us. I know you were in the kitchen watching YouTube. And so just take us back to like what was happening in your life before we started working together.
At that time, I had many years of various forms of help, and I had done everything I know to do, but I still dealt with depression and anxiety. And I felt like I was operating at 60% of my potential and capacity, and even my calling and the desire where I wanted to be at all levels, like just 60% across the board. And at that point, I felt like there was nothing else I knew to do to up that. It was my own personal glass ceiling where I could see more. I could see more stability. I could see more clarity. I could see more advancement in my life because but I couldn't get to it. It just was up there.
Wow.
And so I was very frustrated. It just felt really stuck.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you pointed out there that you had already come so far. You'd already done a number of things, which I absolutely want to talk about in a moment. But what stands out in your mind in that stage? Like, what was the most frustrating part for you? Like, what was really happening?
Well, to know there's more, and to believe there's more, and not know how to get to that point.
Okay.
Exhausted.
So what kinds of things come to mind that you were still struggling with? So like insomnia or overthinking, or like kind of like what was happening?
Overthinking, brain fog, a lot of brain fog, just this overwhelm, overwhelmed. And it would vary. It wasn't always the same level. I would have good days and not so good days. Anxiety, now that I'm not as bad, now that I've recovered a lot, anxiety was so high. I didn't even realize it at the time.
Wow.
A lot of the brain fog was from anxiety being so high. So just feeling like I couldn't, like I had all this potential, even in my own mind and even in my own life. And I had really good days, but when I couldn't predict always the bad days, and I just couldn't do anything about them. And it's it's like something on the other side of glass. You can see it, but you can't access it. And that was my frustration, was knowing it's possible, believing it's possible to have more healing and more stability and be able to live the life I wanted to live, but not being able to bridge that gap, but seeing it's possible.
That's beautiful.
Frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So where would you say you are now? Like what's changed for you?
Anxiety isn't my norm now. And again, it wasn't until it got better that I could tell, oh my goodness, I was living
so interesting
level of angst and just anxiety that even what would have been my norm or my doing okay now is unacceptable. It's like, no, that's too high. My brain is a lot more clear. I don't have the brain fog. I mean, occasionally I will have a day or two or something, but my norm is more clarity. And I have just more peace of mind, peace in general, like even in my body,
Yeah.
just when you have anxiety,
Yeah.
every part of you is revved up and revving.
Mhm.
It's like your car's in park and you got the e-brake on, but somebody's pressing that accelerator. You're not going anywhere, but you're sure
Wow.
a lot of energy. And
Wow.
so now to have that sense of peace where it's like, oh, okay, this is what that's like to feel calm
Wow.
normally.
Yeah.
So
I love that he said that, like you didn't even recognize quite how much you're just so good at coping with it. Didn't even realize at what level it was at. Wow. Wow. Okay. So more peace. So let's talk about what you're able to accomplish. Cause I know that was a big thing of like going, hey, there's more over there. I'm not quite where I want to be. So now where are you at with being able to accomplish more?
it's funny because it takes such little effort to do the same amount of things compared to what it.
Wow.
So I used to feel like I could function a good 3, maybe 4 days a week pretty solidly, but I would need 2 or 3 days to recover. And
Okay.
now I mean, I like my downtime, but
Yeah.
it doesn't require the effort to do the same amount of things. And then I'm able to add more to my plate without it feeling like it's taking away from my health, my mental health and stability. So, I mean, I don't have
Mm.
I can't quantify that right now, but it's, sometimes when you've come so far, you forget what it was like.
Hmm.
So even just talking about that, it's like, oh, wow, seem, it's almost like that commercial or that, that easy button. That was easy. You press the button, I think it's Staples, where it's like, wow, that would have, like recently, I don't remember what it was. I had a lot going on and that would have floored me. And now
Mm.
doing pretty good, feeling pretty good. Wow. But again, you tend to forget because you have a
Sure.
norm. So
They have a new
yeah,
norm. Yeah.
yeah.
That's good. That's good. Love that. Love that. Good. How long ago did anxiety, depression, even the bipolar disorder diagnosis start popping up for you? Like what was happening? What were the warning signs that you saw and how early was that?
So, oh gosh, we're talking almost 3 decades. So in my early 20s, I just would cycle. I was more aware of the depression side of things. And so I saw at the time a nurse practitioner, and she said she thought I had premenstrual dysmorphic disorder. I think that's what it's called. And so she put
Okay.
me on antidepressant. So I was like 21 maybe.
Wow.
And then that did seem to help, but it wasn't enough. I didn't do anything for the anxiety. And then I was put on birth control pills to help control hormones because my
Mm.
happen around my cycle. That's when I would have problems with mood and more mood than anxiety. And so I was put on birth control pills for a couple of years just to balance out hormones. Now looking back, I think that did more harm than good, because when I got off them, when my husband and
Hmm.
I were married, I got off of them and I was worse, way worse off.
Wow.
Um, there was that. And then around the age of 30, now looking back, I now know what I was having was severe PTSD, but I started
Okay.
having flashbacks of pretty traumatic
Mm.
events that I hadn't remembered.
Okay.
And that was when I was at my worst. I mean, I was
Yeah.
having so much come up. And if anybody's familiar with PTSD, when you have a flashback, you
Yeah.
can be like there.
Yeah.
And that would happen during my day. I'd be at work and suddenly, and I didn't really understand what was happening.
Okay.
So that's when
Wow.
the other aspects of things like the bipolar, being diagnosed with bipolar, came in around that time
Okay.
back again. And I think, well, that sounds like classic PTSD to me.
Okay.
Um,
So initially depression, some dysmorphic issues there. Again, not doing much about the anxiety. Knew that was there. Didn't do much about that. Okay. Some traditional treatments. Yep. By birth control pill is often a way that yep, the medical community is like, hey, let's try to regulate those hormones. Okay. That may have made things worse. Um, Okay, and then again, bipolar disorder possibly was thrown out there as well. And that's one of my questions, was that that diagnosis was thrown out then in your 30s, and you've lived under that mantle for quite some time then. Yeah?
Mhm. Yeah, I have.
Okay. What did that look like for you, Mary? Like, what were some of the stigmas? What were some of the things in your thoughts as receiving that diagnosis that came in your head, or that, were just
Oh, it was a huge source of shame. And
mm,
not only because just in general in our society that has been a stigmatized diagnosis, but also because my mom had it as well and was diagnosed. So I grew up with mental illness, with a parent with severe mental illness. So it was not just the shame, but it was like, oh my goodness, this is what I'm gonna be. I already had a predetermined idea of what living with bipolar would look like, and it didn't look good. It wasn't what I wanted
wow.
for life. It was like the exact opposite. I was a very driven person,
Mhm.
very achievement oriented and goal oriented, career oriented. And I just felt like my mind was around that age 30, my mind was just melting, falling apart. And so, I mean, it was literally the exact opposite of the life I wanted. So,
Wow. Wow. Thank
yeah,
you for that. I appreciate the honesty on that, just the shame, the stigma that's there, and then going, hey, this is going to hold me back.
yeah,
Wow. Okay. Okay. And out of that diagnosis, they did put you on medication for it, right? They've put you
yes.
on. Okay. Okay. How long were you on that medication?
It will have been about 20 years.
Okay. Wow. Wow. And then I know, Mary, you've done a lot of work to make it better, to manage, so what are some of the things, like, what did you do? How did you make it more manageable so that it didn't hold you back as much?
In terms of like, well, I know I had gone through a lot of therapy. I mean, I spent looking back, it's been all total about 14 plus years of formal
Wow.
therapy, different types, therapy comes in different
Hmm.
types, various, forget what they're called, but yeah, there's different kinds. And so I tried several, stayed with the same therapist for as long as 7 years. I was very dedicated weekly. And when I say therapy, weekly. And
Wow.
not only, I was never the client who would wait till the session. I was so desperate to get healthy and well. I would be like journaling and processing the whole time. And so there's probably some of that anxiety, just ram
Hmm.
my way through this. I'll beat this. I'm going to get well. I'm going to get healthy. So I went through all that therapy, countless retreats, healing retreats, just, reading all the books, the self-help stuff, just
Hmm.
all kinds. And then the nutrition aspect, I believe I've always been a firm believer in nutrition. And so I ate real clean as far as I thought. And then I found out that for me, gluten triggered major depression. And so
Wow.
I switched my eating and I exercised. I still am a pretty
Hmm.
regular exerciser. So going on walks was a big deal for managing the
Okay.
anxiety. And if the weather was bad and I wasn't able to go for a walk, I would start to feel it coming up.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. Wow, I appreciate that recap of just, and I love your distinction about therapy, because man, there's different kinds of therapy. You're right about that, but I mean, I guess more than that is the way we approach therapy. So some folks, it's kind of easy to just come in, talk about their feelings, and then there's others that are like, hey, I'm here for a purpose, and that looks very different. And you can make a lot of progress, but obviously not at all where you wanted to go.
Exactly. And I was in school, I took psychology, got a degree in it. I was going to be a marriage and family therapist. That was my goal.
Wow.
And honestly, when I reached a point where I felt like it wasn't doing all the techniques I knew about weren't getting me past that 60% threshold, I lost faith in it. It had its
Hmm.
place. I'm grateful for some of the stuff that I learned, but it just couldn't get me over that hump. And so that's where I kept thinking I should go back to school and get my master's and pursue that. I already have my bachelor's. And I was thinking in my head, but I
Wow.
never did, because I honestly lost faith in it. It stopped
Yeah.
working for me.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Thank you for that, Mary. So now, having graduated from Achieve Emotional Mastery, what stood out to you about what was different from our approach compared to all the many good things that you had used and tried?
The combination, I've known, I tried with different ways, like the emotional health piece with therapy and therapeutic techniques. I knew about the nutrition. I knew about, needing a strong spiritual connection. I had pieces, but I was missing chunks in each of those pieces. But I knew already that we're holistic beings, that we need all of those components need to be dealt with, especially with mental health issues, because it really is the juncture of all of these aspects of who we are. And so Achieve Emotional Mastery, what struck me was I had never heard anybody saying, well, first of all, there's healing. Especially if you've had a bipolar diagnosis, you are not told that. We're like,
Right.
meds and therapy for the rest of your life. And so that never sat well with me. And I just didn't connect. It didn't align with what I knew about God and the Bible and what the Bible says and what God promises. That's the first thing. So hearing someone
Come on.
say that there is complete healing available. And then the combination of the different aspects of, the spiritual, the physical, the emotional coming together and working at the same time, not just, going over here doing emotional and then I go over here doing spiritual, just bringing those all together simultaneously. And it just was amazing. It was like inside, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been waiting for. Is what I've been knowing. I've known this, but I didn't, you don't hear this in general. So it was literally, I knew as I was listening as the YouTube video was playing, I was doing the dishes, and I knew right then and there, this is the answer to prayer. I've been praying for a long time.
That's so good. That is hard not to get teary-eyed on that, Mary. That's beautiful. Yeah. That's good. That's good. So as you watch the masterclass, then there's confirmation of the things you've been praying for, the things that you knew, the things you've been researching. Just the question was how do I put these things together?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm now looking back, I remember being so excited. I just was like, oh my gosh. So yeah, it was very refreshing and validating even to hear what was shared in the masterclass. The information and the approach was just
beautiful. Love that. What were results that you received from Achieve Emotional Mastery?
So I just hope was restored, and I got tools that I knew what to do when I was having a difficult struggle. Just being, I just felt like all this opportunity that was opening up to me as I got further along in my journey and in my healing. It was a time of renewed hope, and the results were, as I got further and Achieve Emotional Mastery, my anxiety would go down and down and down. And I just remember feeling like, wow, okay, I really was dealing with a whole lot more baseline anxiety than I realized. The other thing was just was a time of hope, and I was feeling better physically, emotionally, and really connecting with God in a new way. And I had a really strong relationship with the Lord, but the combination of all of the pieces, and then what it did help me have a relationship with the Lord through the Word of God, which was new to me. I believed in the Word. I read it. I had a hard time relating to it. For me, it was just really hard. But through Achieve Emotional Mastery, I learned how to have a connection with God through His Word, and that was invaluable. Also, going through it, my husband joined me through a lot of it, and so he would do some of it as well. And just being able to have common language over,
Yeah.
I've been in that world of healing for a while. And then when my husband joined me, then he started getting into that and getting some tools for himself. And then we had a common language and common understanding. And it's one of the fruits of the Achieve Emotional Mastery is that our marriage is just so solid and strong, and we're connected in ways that we couldn't connect with before. And that's just, I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
It's a huge plus. I mean, it's
It's beautiful. I love that you shared that. I love that you shared that, because so many of, again, we work with couples, and that is always one of those pluses. I'm like, hey, I'm not a marriage coach, but this is going to take the marriage to the next level. And so I love that it did. That's
it
good.
really does. Yeah.
Good. I want to backtrack and talk about the faith piece a little bit. So, what did your relationship with God look like before? And how did the mental health piece play into that? Like, what were some of the questions, concerns that you had around your faith due to this struggle?
I would go to the Lord, and I'd never had a problem with prayer and hearing his voice to me. But so much of what I would pray and when I would connect with the Lord was around this. It really was kind of like, help, Lord, help. And it wasn't, just like with that glass ceiling in every area of my life, I felt like even in that, and it wasn't on God's side, I couldn't connect deeper. I couldn't get, and I was just really coping, even spiritually. The Lord was my rock and my shelter. And thank God, but it was a coping place. It wasn't a place of coming into moving beyond that place of just managing. So it just
Wow.
was a wall. I couldn't. And for me, what that ended up translating into is going deeper into intimacy with the Lord. I mean, now it was like there was this wall around my heart. And now, I mean, it's just that wall's gone. And I press into his presence. I press into him, and I can feel, I'm a feeler. So I can feel him. It's just, rather than kind of, I knew intellectually God's in me through the Holy Spirit, but it was still kind of this distance. And now I don't feel that distance with the Lord anymore.
That's beautiful.
He's right here. Like we're doing life together.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Mary. That's incredibly personal. I really appreciate that. Yeah. Beautiful. What about your resiliency to handle things that come? Like, I can't stop life from happening. So where are you at with that?
Exactly. There's a piece about knowing that, because I've already experienced some life, even while in going through Achieve Emotional Mastery, life still happens. There's a piece because I now know how to live above what. So before Achieve Emotional Mastery, I felt at the whim of my mood, at the whim of the anxiety. I felt it controlled me. And now, even with life happening, I have the tools that I need. And now I have the experience of knowing they work to be able to come back up. Even if I have a dip, I know how to come back up. And so where I'm above where I used to be, where I feel like I have control over my mood, like rather than it controlling me, I have agency again.
Good. That's good. Love that. Love that. So for our audience watching and just being inspired by your testimony to go, wow, I'm dealing with these things, wanting to change my life. And so they're watching. What would you say, just encouragement for them if they're kind of on the fence, like, I don't know, maybe I should book a call, maybe I shouldn't book a call. What would you say to them in this place of just like, I think the biggest question folks have is like, is this thing real? Will this really make a difference? That's usually the question. So what would you say to them?
It is real. It is very backed with research, very backed up with what the Bible teaches. I was skeptical. I was hopeful. I wanted it to work, but I was also at the place where I was like, oh my gosh, I tried so many things. But yeah, it's the real deal. And it's based on truth. And truth is what sets us free. And to achieve emotional mastery gives you the tools, information, and support to be able to move past this and move from managing and coping to really living.
Beautiful. I just want to thank you for your work and your time. Part of the reason why you've had such amazing transformation is because you have stepped up to your game in an amazing way. And so I just really thank you for that.
Thank you.
I appreciate Mary's willingness to share with you exactly how she was able to transform her life and finally step into a place of freedom. If you are ready to have a transformation of your own and really come out from underneath anxiety and depression and learn to walk in peace and joy, your first step is to watch our free masterclass. This is where you're going to learn the same 5 shifts that Mary used to overcome anxiety and depression and achieve emotional mastery. We understand that you are body, mind, and spirit, and we really tackle this thing from all 3 angles, showing you exactly what you need to do to heal physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And this is what will allow you to heal completely and to overcome this thing once and for all. So again, if you are ready for a transformation, go check out our masterclass. You can do that at stacyrivera.com/freedom. I look forward to seeing you there.